They're trying to pull the wool over your eyes while you weren't looking. Your dinner was disguised.
GMOs are genetically modified organisms, which are a disastrous biological strategy.
Genetically modified organisms, okay? It's not the same thing as you grow in your garden.
A lot of corporations have started to modify foods so that they won't reproduce on their own. The seeds are neutered.
I'm here to support the movement to stop Monsanto and to keep our food clean from genetically modified organisms.
It's devastating to people with major food sensitivities, and it increases inflammation in most people.
I'm very conscious about what I eat, and I just know that how this food is modified has long-term ramifications on human health. So that's why I'm here to support, not just support the movement, but because I care about my health and my family's health as well.
It is so important to know what is in your food and that all foods should be labeled. You have that right to know what's there.
I don't understand why we can't label our foods in this country. China, they put lead in their baby food, for God's sake. They label their foods. Why can't we?
Label it. Get rid of it. Get it out of the world. It's dangerous. 522, Initiative 522.
They label your mattresses. You know what's in your mattresses. You should know what's in your food.
I'm Dr. Robert Chittenden. This is the Lavender Festival in Sequim, and I'm manning the booth for the GAG, which is the GMO Awareness Group. I've been involved with the group for about 2 years. Just in the last couple months, we have now become a political campaign, and so we're registered with the PDC. But before that, we were just an informal organization. We have monthly meetings, third Tuesday in the Sequim Library. Well, we've had these fairs recently. There was a parade in Port Angeles a month ago. Now there's a Lavender Festival. And throughout the summer, there will be a series of festivals like this. We're trying to raise awareness of GMOs. That's what we're really about. And we're also supporting the initiative. That's Initiative 522, which will be up in November. The initiative will require labeling on genetically modified foods, or actually foods that are genetically engineered or have components that are genetically engineered. I'm a fisheries biometrician. I taught for a brief time at Simon Fraser University and got my doctorate from University of Washington. I've been at about 12 different universities over my career. Now, at these times, I now do consulting primarily for property rights groups. Well, I had been invited to write the fisheries restoration plan for the removal of the Elwha Dam by Senator Slade Gorton. That initially got me up here. I see the campaign as just another political campaign. The usual techniques and questions, bumper stickers and buttons, and getting the public to know. When we began collecting signatures for the initiative, very few people knew what GMOs were. Today, the vast majority know and support what we're doing. And I would say that probably not even 10% are not aware of the issue. There are a number of health problems. Roundup Ready, which has the active ingredient is glyphosate, inhibits the production of 3 essential amino acids, and that's how they kill. It's a herbicide. That's how it kills plants. The plants cannot produce it. The theory is that we're omnivores. We have other sources of these amino acids, But in fact, some recent research has shown that our gut bacteria is our principal source, and if we eat Roundup Ready, that is things with the Roundup, with the glyphosate, it kills our gut bacteria, and we develop deficiencies in those 3 essential amino acids. That results in deficiencies in serotonin and dopamine, and also one other neurotransmitter. The result is that it disrupts the endocrine system, and we get problems with all of our organs. Now, there are a bunch of different GMOs, and everyone has a different problem. Some are actually beneficial, but some are definitely not. One of the common ones that is harmful to health is Bt, which stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a soil bacteria. It produces an enzyme that perforates the guts of insects because it adheres to a particular site on their guts. We don't have those sites, so it's not supposed to be harmful to us, but in fact research shows that in practice it is.
I'm Alexis Braden-Mayer. I'm the political director of the Organic Consumers Association. I'm here in Seattle, Washington for Justice Begins with Seeds 2013. I've been with Organic Consumers since 2005, but the organization started in 1998. And the organization's first campaign was to block Islam Siddiqui, working for the Clinton administration, who was trying to get organic food contaminated with GMOs, sewage sludge, and irradiation, and make that the organic law. Thankfully, Organic Consumers Association, working with many, many others all around the country, were able to beat back that Clinton administration attempt to destroy organic. But unfortunately, Islam Siddiqui did not go away. He currently sits in the Obama administration. He is our trade negotiator for agriculture, and Obama is currently negotiating 2 very large trade deals, one with the Pacific Rim, including Japan and Peru, and one with Europe. And so Islam Siddiqui, between administrations, he actually worked for Crop Life America. That's the pesticide lobbying group that represents Monsanto, Dow, DuPont, Syngenta, BASF, and Bayer, the largest GMO seed and pesticide companies in the world. Well, I'm in Washington, D.C., so I have a lot of wonderful opportunities to meet with leaders on the subjects that I care about most. Being in D.C., I can do a fair amount of lobbying, but most of my work involves communicating back to our members what's happening in Washington, D.C. Right now, I'm focused on stopping the King Amendment to the Farm Bill. This was sponsored by Representative Steve King as part of the House Farm Bill, and it's a very troubling amendment because it deprives states of the right that they have under the Constitution currently to regulate the food that their citizens eat. The King Amendment is aimed at getting rid of Prop 2. It was a ballot initiative passed by voters in California, very modest animal welfare provision that just says farm animals should have enough room to spread their limbs and turn around. But Representative Steve King doesn't like that, so we've dubbed his King Amendment the Animal Cruelty Protection Act. But this amendment is also drafted so broadly that it could affect the work that we're doing on a whole number of food safety and consumer right to know issues, including GMO labeling and the regulation of GMO at the local and state level. The Organic Consumers Association and our political organization, the Organic Consumers Fund, is currently doing our very best to raise money for the ballot initiative in Washington State, I-522. This ballot initiative will give consumers what they want. 9 out of 10 people want the right to know what they're eating. The ballot initiative would tell people if their food has been genetically engineered. I'm not on the steering committee, but I have been involved in our ballot initiative campaigns since I first met Pam Larry of Label GMOs in California. She came to me when I met her, I believe it was the fall of 2010. She said she thought that we should put GMO labels on the ballot in California. And I was so overwhelmed by that idea. I certainly agreed with her, but I'm embarrassed now to say that I told Pam, oh, we can't do a ballot initiative. That would cost too much money. But I thought about it a little bit, and I talked to her again, and I said, I think I might know one person who might have enough money to get a campaign off the ground like this. And I introduced Pam Larry to David Bronner of Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, and thankfully the rest is history. They put on a fantastic campaign. It was only very narrowly defeated when Monsanto, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, and the rest of the pesticide, chemical, GMO food lobby spent almost $50 million against our initiative. We raised about $8 million, which I think is a miraculous feat. And it was enough to get the word out to a certain extent, but it wasn't enough to beat back almost $50 million worth of lies. Pam Larry is a wonderful woman. She just is working from her heart. She's a grandma who lives in Chico, California. She has done organic flower gardening and made that a business. She's also been a midwife. She's been involved in the organic community and in the natural health community for all of her life. And when she saw the Obama administration approving so many new GMOs, and she saw this potential that we had with people reacting to that to coalesce our anger into something positive, she came up with the idea of doing a ballot initiative in California to label GMOs. And I thought it was crazy at first. I thought it was impossible, but she made it work. We joined her campaign, and she is now the grandmother of our movement to label GMOs through this ballot initiative process, which we'll see Washington State attempt this fall, 2013.
They're trying to pull the wool over your eyes while you weren't looking. Your dinner was disguised. You won't see it mentioned in the supermarket aisle. It's hiding in the boxes where the GMOs are piled. You've got a right to know. A right to know. You've got a right to know. A right to know.
Genetically engineered foods is extremely important to me because I have children, and it's important to me to know what I'm feeding them. It's important to me as a mother to know what I'm giving them to put into their young bodies.
The fact that we have so many regular, ordinary consumers and citizens showing up on a Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. goes to show this is truly a citizens-led initiative. And I want to emphasize the point that the reason we chose this day and this location is because in this building tomorrow commences a meeting of some of the top funders for No on 522, the people who are funding the No campaign that don't want you to know what's in your food.
We have millions of people.
We are millions of people strong across the world. In fact, 64 countries require some sort of labeling or an outright ban on genetically modified material infiltrating their food supply. And this is something that is shared by most ordinary consumers in the United States. We need to be empowered to make clear, informed choices about what we want to eat ourselves and feed our families.
We're particularly concerned because a Washington State University study that came out last year shows increased use of pesticides in genetically modified foods. And we think that that impacts Washington families, and we simply think that people have the right to choose what they want to put in their bodies, what they want to feed their children.
I have spoken to many different people in our community about whether or not to label GMOs. The different people that I have spoken to, there's many different groups. There are people who know what GMOs are and would like them labeled in their food. There are people who don't know what GMOs are, but they want to learn. So I encourage people in this community to teach about what they are. Then there are people who know what GMOs are, but they say that it is or is not going to affect the choices that they make. So even though these people are all different, many of these people that I've spoken to, many of these different groups say that it's a good idea to label their foods because they want to have the choice to see what's in their foods and whether or not it's going to change their choices. So simply, me as a healthcare professional, I want this to go into effect. I want to know what's in my food.
Transparency comes with labeling. If there's nothing to hide, why not label?
What I've realized in the last 5 years is not about putting vitamins into rice to feed starving people in Asia. Basically, 90% of corn planted today, over 90% of soybean are genetically engineered to resist Monsanto's Roundup. Massive amounts of weed killer are being sprayed on these crops, which is creating super weeds. The overspraying of this weed killer, like these chemical companies, short-term profit and short-term interest, they engineer and convince farmers, hey, you can just grow the same crop year after year after year. You don't have to use any other weed control method. Just blast glyphosate, blast our weed killer year after year after year. And what's happened is what any weed scientist who wasn't bought and paid for by the chemical industry knew and was saying, and has now been proven right, is that now we have weeds that have developed resistance to glyphosate. So now we have these super weeds that they're blasting more and more weed killer on. This is resulting in more and more weed killer residues in our food. So now the chemical industry's response is, rather than move to a more sustainable, integrated pest management cycle where you interrupt pest cycles, sustainably, naturally, you plant perimeter plants that pests prefer. We're okay with chemical controls if they're used judiciously within an overall weed management strategy. But these chemical companies are just basically saying, oh, just keep blasting our weed killer in huge amounts. So these super weeds are just everywhere now. They're taking over the country. And now their answer is, okay, well, now we're going to engineer the next generation crops, and these next generation crops are going to be resistant to dicamba and 2,4-D. Dicamba is one of the worst weed killers as far as toxicity. It's a potent neurotoxin. 2,4-D is the main ingredient in Agent Orange. And these are weed killers that we were supposed to be able to be moving away from. This technology was introduced, and Monsanto was saying, oh, we're going to use Roundup, it's safer, and you don't need to use dicamba and 2,4-D. Well, guess what? Now their short-sighted, short-term business model has now produced weeds that they can't kill with glyphosate, so now they're engineering resistance so we can blast our food with much more toxic weed killers. So for me, it was just like a real wake-up call. Like, hey, this isn't just about engineering bigger vegetables and crap. This is about chemical companies selling chemicals, and Americans need to wake up and demand transparency in food labeling, and just like all these other citizens all around the world enjoy. Maybe may at some point in time be a good application of this technology, but even so, that, like, let's say the orange crop, supposedly they may be engineering a spinach gene into orange crops that can help do whatever. Even if that turns out to be a good use of the technology, that the orange industry should not stand in the way of consumers' right to know. They should be up front and make their case what they're doing. And what's happening now is that the chemical and pesticide industry is spending tens of millions of dollars to keep us in the dark about what they're doing. What we're really excited about here in Washington is that there's just this huge grassroots coalition of moms, consumers, health advocates, environmentalists, nurses that have come together and put this opportunity to the people of Washington, that on Election Day in November, they can decide whether or not they are able to make informed, powerful choices about what kind of foods they eat, what kind of food they feed their families.
Thankfully, I've been eating organic for a long time, and I've never had health problems, and my children are very healthy. But I'm lucky to have gotten into this movement before this rash of health problems associated with GMOs really reached a crescendo. And almost every parent, mother, and person that I meet who's newly involved in this movement is involved because they found that their health problems were in a large part solved and mitigated through adopting a non-GMO diet. And it really saddens me that this is the case. I repeated what scientists warned and said that horrible things could happen to human health if we eat GMOs. I always wish that it would not turn out to be the case. But now that we've been consuming GMOs for between 15 and 20 years, we're going on the 20th anniversary of the approval of RBGH, the recombinant bovine growth hormone, Monsanto's first product for the U.S. food supply, for the food supply in the world. Now that we're almost 20 years out from the introduction of GMOs to our diet, we are unfortunately seeing a range of health problems that thankfully can be mitigated and in some cases solved by adopting a non-GMO diet. Well, thankfully, it's still fairly easy to avoid genetically engineered organisms in our food if you know which of the crops have been genetically modified. We've got corn, soy, cotton, canola, alfalfa, and sugar beets. And, you know, perhaps edamame, soybeans is something people might eat as a whole food. Corn on the cob is something people might eat as a whole food that could also be genetically modified. But for the most part, we're talking about crops that are processed and either put into animal feed or made into highly processed ingredients like high fructose corn syrup and trans fats and all the things we know we're not supposed to eat anyway. So when I'm trying to move people along into a non-GMO diet, the first thing I suggest is get rid of the things that you know you shouldn't be eating anyway that also happen to be genetically modified. Stop drinking soda, high fructose corn syrup, but read your labels because high fructose corn syrup is in ketchup and all kinds of things you wouldn't imagine. The trans fats, the cottonseed oil, the soybean oil, especially the partially hydrogenated versions of this, you wouldn't believe the places that cottonseed oil turn up. It doesn't seem, you know, it's certainly not a food you would cook with at home, but it's in everything from Ritz crackers to muffins, all kinds of baked goods. So read your labels, look out for those soy and corn and cotton and sugar ingredients as well. Cut down on processed foods that have sugar because that's probably sugar from GMO sugar beets. But this is a really easy way to wean yourself off of GMOs. Start with the junk foods, read the labels, and then the big category that is a little bit harder is animal products. Just about every single animal product that you eat that comes from the grocery store or at restaurants has been fed a GMO diet. Almost all pigs and chickens and cows are eating exclusively GMO soy and corn. This is ruining their health, but it's also ruining our health. And we know that the GMO traits are getting into our system. Seems kind of weird that you could eat an animal that ate GMOs and then get those GMOs into your system, but unfortunately learned from a scientist's report in Canada where they surveyed women and they also surveyed the cord blood of their newborn fetuses, and they found that 90% of women and 80% of their babies were born with Monsanto's BT gene in their blood. BT is a variety of genetically modified corn and also cotton. And there may be soy and other crops, but it's mostly corn and cotton. And these BT crops are mainly fed to animals. So when the scientists tried to figure out how the BT trait that Monsanto had engineered ended up in the blood of your average Canadian woman and her baby, they figured that this is not through minor ingredients like high fructose corn syrup or something that's highly processed like that. This is actually from eating animals that ate GMOs. So it's very important when adopting a non-GMO diet to address animal products fairly quickly because I'm afraid that is the cause of most of our health problems. The animals eat a great deal of GMOs. One great concern of ours right now is that Monsanto and the Grocery Manufacturers Association, if they feel that American democracy is too successful and that Americans are going to fight for the right to know what we're eating, especially when 9 out of 10 of us agree. And in fact, the New York Times just reported that their most recent poll shows 93% of Americans support labels on genetically modified food. So there's a big democracy problem looming for the Grocery Manufacturers Association and Monsanto. They are in trouble. We are going to label GMOs in this country. Even as corrupted as our government is by corporate money, it's going to happen because when you get 9 out of 10 people pushing a cause, it's inevitable. So what the Obama administration is working on right now is negotiating trade deals with Europe, trade deals with countries around the Pacific, including Japan, which has labels on GMOs just like Europe does, and which acts quickly when we have GMO contamination scandals in the United States, like unapproved GMO wheat into our what is a normally non-GMO wheat supply in the United States. So Japan stopped allowing U.S. wheat imports at all, and Europe heavily regulates GMOs, and Peru, which is part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, one of the trade deals that the Obama administration is negotiating right now. Peru just put a 10-year moratorium on all GMOs. This is a problem for Monsanto and the Grocery Manufacturers Association. They don't want to have to deal with countries that are rejecting U.S. GMOs. But I think that the other thing that's driving the aggressive stance of the Obama administration to try to eliminate what they see as barriers to trade when people stand up for their rights as eaters, I think that one of the things that's driving this is actually the coming success of the non-GMO movement in the United States. I'm almost embarrassed to be called a role model for young people, because when I was young, I didn't know much about the world. When I was even as a law student, my diet was Mountain Dew and Doritos and a lot of takeout Chinese food, and I was vegetarian because I wanted to feed the world and I couldn't stand the thought of the rainforest being cut down for cattle grazing, but I didn't think much about my own health. And the young people that I meet today really understand that it's not just about saving the world, it's about saving your health and teaching other people how to have a healthy diet, because that's not guaranteed in the United States anymore. When I was young, there's certainly plenty of junk food, but it wasn't genetically modified. Certainly plenty of fatty meats and animal products, but they didn't all come from factory farms. But now, almost all of our food is genetically modified and or comes from a factory farm. And this is obviously horrible for the planet. It's also terrible for our health. So I want to give advice to young people out there: care for your own health as much as the planet and help others do the same.
By the horns, it's been feedlot raised on GMO corn. There's no genetic label. They're twisting your arms. They're secretly polluting our food with their factory farms. You've got a right to know, a right to know. You've got a right to know. Biotech bullies took your right to know. Monsanto bullies took your right to know. It's not on the label, your right to know. You gotta stand up and fight for your right to know. Stand up and fight for your right